was a huge rush to get things voted because our other co-chair disappeared or resigned, and we entered that creation of an alternate co-chair in that minute. It was never part of the original bylaws. It was never part of original PCCEP. It got added in at that meeting.
It wasn't. It was
before that, Amy. And that's why Andrew stepped into it.
No, so just to be clear, I think we don't need to make a huge deal out of this. So Judith was right. When we first created PCCEP, it was me and Lakeisha as co-chairs. Andrew was an alternate co-chair, and Michelle was the secretary. We never had to do a special election for the other co-chair. That term filled up this past September or November, whenever we voted on it, and Andrew ran as a co-chair, and Elliot ran as a co-chair, and Andrew won, and so Elliot became the alternate. But
okay.
I think that, yeah, I appreciate that, but I think it's honestly, we just need to say, do we just want to fill the seat at the end of this meeting? The bylaws state, let's see here. Resignation. An elected officer may vacate the position for any reason. The member will continue to participate as a full PCCEP member. PCCEP may fill a vacant position by a special election. So I think we could do a little update. Honestly, we need to codify PCCEP. It's another story. We should save it for later, but I think we can correct it in there. Or not correct it, but just update it a little bit. But my suggestion is that we do a special election at the end of this month to fill it. Judith just mentioned may fill, so if y'all don't want to fill it, but I think Elliot, if I can, you would want to serve in that position.
Sure, I'd be happy to serve in that position till November.
And if anybody,
I would like to run for alternate co-chair again. I didn't make it the last time.
okay, so yeah, let's get people on the ballot for that, and I think you'd be great in that position. So we will send out a notice tonight that says both of those positions are open. You can run for them, or maybe we just want to say we would just like Elliot to be in it. I don't know if y'all have any thoughts about that.
I don't think anyone's going to run against Elliot one way or the other. So I think to check the boxes, Elliot should probably run for it, but I think he's going to be the only one. I'm more curious about filling that co-chair position, so we have somebody that wants to be in there doing it rather than Elliot filling up kind of both those areas.
There's just a request to clarify the positions. Officers will be responsible for conducting PCCEP meetings. Officers remain voting members of PCCEP. A presiding officer will be designated at all times. Officers may request that the mayor's office provide culturally responsive facilitator. Officers will encourage full and safe participation by everyone, assist in the process of building consensus, ensure all participants abide by PCCEP's operating procedures. The co-chairs, office liaison, and project manager will serve as liaison between the PCCEP members and the city. In consultation with the facilitator, if there is one, and project manager, officers will develop meeting agendas, establish subcommittees if needed, and ensure efficient advisory process. So that's that. So what we're gonna do, we will have, we will take solicitations from everybody for who wants to run. We'll set a cutoff date since the meeting's on the 28th, which is 2 weeks from now. We'll put a cutoff date of Tuesday, the 21st, to throw your hat in the ring for either position, either the co-chair or the alternate co-chair, and go from there. Any other piece of comment before we open it up to public?
I just had a question. I mean, I don't think this is going to be an issue, but let's say I did run for co-chair and someone else ran for co-chair, and then, so I didn't become the co-chair, then the alternate position, in other words, would I have to relinquish the alternate position to run for co-chair? I'm not sure how these things, or should we just run like we did before? You run for co-chair, and then the person with the most chair and the person with the second most votes gets alternate.
This gets really wacky, but I think we should run in a fair thing. I think you should run for co-chair first, finish that election, and then pick for the alternate, because then what ends up happening if that doesn't happen is you might vote for someone for the alternate position and give your other vote to the co-chair, but your vote would be different if you knew the other person wasn't going to win. So I honestly think that one should happen before the other. I think what we've done in the past is we voted on both at the same time, but your vote would change based off who you knew had won, right? It's like,
But Lakiana, real quick, I think the progression of what you guys said earlier of Elliot moving into that co-chair position, I think that would be a really good strategic move. And then if anyone wants to run against me for alternate co-chair, I think that would be a better way to do it, because he's already served a year in this position and kind of, according to the rules, should be moved into the co-chair position, and I'm good with that. I don't have a problem. So unless you were going to open it up to the community running against him, because there's no criteria for how long you have to be on PCCEP to run for co-chair.
you have to be a PCCEP member to run for co-chair.
Right?
You have to be a PCCEP member to run for co-chair.
I think it would be nice to give everyone an opportunity on PCCEP to run for that, for both those. And I'm sure Elliot will get it, but, you know, just open it up.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, what we want to establish is a situation where we don't want to establish a situation where somebody is like, if I have 2 votes and I vote for one position and I give for the other, you know, you put in a situation where they're not, when you vote for both of them simultaneously, you're not allowing for someone to vote for their best choices. You're asking them to make a prediction for one seat to base it on the other. And I think that's not the right way to do it, if that makes any sense.
So you do it sequentially, like you said.
Yeah, we vote for one first.
Yeah,
and then
you just vote sequentially. First for co-chair, and then, yeah.
Co-chairs, right?
I agree.
Yep, and so anybody who's running for alternate, then we know where you're standing. But if you're running for co-chair, your name automatically is in the ring for the alternate as well. Okay, so that's what we'll do. Sequential voting. Does that fit with everybody? Amy, does that make sense for you? Does that feel okay?
Yes. If that's what you want to do, yeah. I just wanted to give credence to the position you created, because I thought the theory was if an open position happened, they would move in, but okay. Now we're voting. We're voting again in November, right? Because Lakiana, your position is up this November.
Correct.
Chair.
Everybody's positions will, I think, are open to be revoted on.
Yeah, but Lakiana has over 2 years, would be 2 years, and that's maxed according to the bylaws.
For the chair, not for the chair.
Yeah, for the chair. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, let's open it up to public comment. Any public comment on our special election for co-chair?
Sounds okay to me. Barbara Boshinsky.
Thanks, Barbara.
This is Jared. I just want to chime in from the DOJ's perspective, and as technical assistants, we've done a fair amount of board service, and that's the standard way to do it is sequentially. So if someone loses on the first election, they can still run for the second election. It shouldn't be exclusive in any sense. So I acknowledge the way you guys have chosen to do it is the proper way.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll send an email tonight. Claudia, can you send that out? And then just make sure to put in there that we would like that it's sequential voting. So we're voting on the co-chair first, followed based off those results for the alternate. And that if you want to put your name in the ring, that you put it in by Tuesday, July 21st at 5 p.m.
I would
Okay.
just add, Luciana, I would just add that in the unlikely event that I didn't get the co-chair position, then I would just stay in the alternate position because there wouldn't need to be an election for that since I already am alternate. You understand? In other words, if I'm alternate currently and I stay alternate, then I don't know to
Yes,
run.
yes. I think that would fit with sequential voting procedures. Yep.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Next item on the agenda, recruitment. So currently we have 3 seats open, Andrews, Steve's, and Andres. And then we will also shortly thereafter have Taji and Britt's seats open. We have a completely, not even sure how I'm supposed to say this, but we don't have a very deep alternate pool right now. I personally think that is outside. That's not a reflection. Can we mute Elliot just so that we don't hear the salmon hit the table? I personally think that's a job of staff and city to make sure that happens. You know, going back to just the point of the capacity of PCCEP volunteers, you know, our hands are already full of so much stuff. I think for us to go out and recruit people, I think naturally when we're at meetings, that's our time to plug. But I don't think, you know, we should be, you know, doing a recruitment drive per se. That being said, the race, ethnicity, the racial equity subcommittee is working with Dr. Joyce Harris to do recruitment of Black women to PCCEP. That came up in one of the committee meetings, the special session meetings to recruit Black women. Other areas that I think of off the top of my head are LGBTQ plus community, persons of color in general, and women. But I want to open it up to just thoughts as far as how we do recruitment, what y'all think based off my suggestion that it should be in paid person's hands to do that recruitment, and just what your thoughts are as far as how we shape the diverse committee.
I think we've been plugging it at some of our listening sessions. I agree. I think that we should all help in that, actually, but that's my thought. As much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Luciana, I had a conversation today with someone who applied at the same time I did for PCCEP, which was at the very beginning. And then she left town to New York, and now she's coming back to Portland. She said she would like to reinitiate her application. And I'm just wondering whether there are other people like her who applied initially, and then, you know, we could go back to that list to see if there are other people who would still be interested and viable.
Yeah, I think we need to go through that list. I know there's at least one individual on there that kind of considers themselves active, but they were approached twice to appear on the committee and did not attend meetings or make it to scheduled votes. And I made my suggestion to Judith that that person should reapply. I think the challenge is, right, you apply to sit on PCCEP and then there's a waiting time, right? And so it might be 6 or 7 months or 5 months or however many months, depending on when the vacancies came up, that a seat opens up. And so you have to go back and revisit, is that person still interested, 5 months down the road? And so it's a difficult list to keep active. But then for those individuals, if you've twice been called to asked if you want to serve on PCCEP and then you don't take those, I don't think I think we have to set a limit on what is considered active members in there, or would we just keep you in there and just keep asking every time? But if you do say I am active and then we schedule you to come in for a vote and you don't attend, I think then that it's just it wastes our time. So that's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking about that, the individual I think you're referring to. It's someone else who had applied and I don't think was ever called, in fact.
No, I wasn't referring to that person. I wasn't talking to them, but I just meant that's just the background on it. And I would suggest that person check in with staff and see if I would consider someone like that as still as like reactivating in the alternate pool. Let's go with Amy, and then I do want to get you in there, Judith, as well. Where you go? Yep.
What I'd like to say is reviewing the email that Steve wrote as he was leaving really made me think about the communities that we haven't even began to reach yet. And the second thing is, will they be technology like prohibited because they don't know how to run a computer or they don't have technology? One of the goals that I've been listening to in our listening sessions is, number one, we have an all male leadership team. People were saying that when they looked at us, they didn't see us as being any different than anybody else out there, even though we said we wanted to make change. We still look a certain way, we still act a certain way, and folks just that I would like to bring in just may not feel comfortable yet. So if we're going to have a committee that's diversified and really, has a lot of diverse populations, we need to do targeted outreach, and we need to do it well. We shouldn't just fill positions to fill positions. We need to do targeted outreach to different advisory committees, because we can be on Zoom now. We can join them and we can make an announcement at these different meetings. So I'm thinking that if we go according to plan, we should be more thoughtful on how we outreach into all of the different communities we haven't even touched yet. So that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I really enjoyed Steve's letter. I thought it was bring up some good points, and I think we'll need to lean on people like you to think about what are those communities that we're missing, what are the committees that we could connect to, and how do we grow it. I also do see, I'll just say that. Yeah, 100% agree. Judith, I know you had a thought in there.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to say that I do believe it is the city's responsibility. And we're in a pickle currently, I'll be quite frank. And just as Jared is saying in the chat box, the failure to appoint replacements in a timely manner could cause us to fall out of substantial compliance. So this is a big issue. So we really would like people's help. It is the staff's job generally. And I think that we want to reach out to a lot of people. I would say, Amy, I think having staffed a lot of committees and staffing this one, an entry-level bottom line is the ability to get online, because there's no way we can be connecting enough with people who don't have that access or that skill. And Barbara's asking me how many current applicants. We only got, as far as I can tell so far, like 4 applicants out of all those listening session meetings. Claudia's going back through all the email to see if there was anything else. I wanted to go back to what Elliot was saying. We have, each time we've done a big recruitment, we have gone through the original list of 100 people who applied, sent emails asking about people who were still interested in applying. The list is now 2 years old, which I think is getting kind of old. I am a little hesitant to send it to the whole list. Elliot, I would really encourage your friend to reapply. We've simplified the application, so hopefully that would be okay. So we just really need to get some folks in the pool so we can give you all a good group of folks to select from. So I hope you will help us. Obviously, it's your choice. And Theo was unexpectedly gone these 2 weeks. He is hopefully coming back next week. And I am stepping in and just trying to do as much as I possibly can with all my other commitments on my plate as well. But I will be spending every additional minute I can trying to do recruitment.
So, and just to be clear, currently there's only 3 seats open. 2 of them happened very recently, you know, and I think once we get out of the settlement agreement and get into our own, you know, into city code, I think we just need to revise that. You know, I think it's 3 seats, and I think we want to do it intentionally and make sure, because those are seats that'll be sitting for a long time. So we got to find a balance between not rushing and just filling them with whoever are the first people that apply. You know, I think
that's why we're asking you, why we're begging you for help.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you don't got to beg. We'll definitely want, you know, we want our committee to be staffed right too. But I think, you know, the plan that we have with Dr. Joyce is definitely a 2-month plan, like something that'll be done by the end of August. Like, there's no way like we can do the recruitment that we want to really recruit a strong pool of Black women in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and Andres, you know, he just put in his resignation.
Right.
I think we're too far out if we could get some folks in the pipeline. So, and my guess, and Jared, I don't want to speak for you, I'm hoping that if we can show some definite progress toward filling the pool and getting folks applying, that there will be some grace from the DOJ.
For those of you who are just joining, welcome. We're currently on the agenda item about filling 3 vacant seats for PCCEP due to 3 individuals who all are moving at this time. We're going to open it up to public comment. Any thoughts on, as far as our recruitment, the diversity of the makeup of the group? I want to say there's currently 4 women on the committee, 4 or 5 women. Representation from Black, Latinx, Indigenous, and some other communities as well. I don't want to interpret or misinterpret communities, but we have those groups at least as a baseline, but they could definitely be strengthened. So any public comment on that? Okay, I think we should set some numbers. I think we need like more of a plan than just like, let's recruit some people. I think we need to say like, we want to recruit 10 people for the alternate pool by
end of July.
I think by the end of August. I don't think July is realistic. I mean, like when you say to the pool, that's like had an interview and is like in the pool.
Oh, no, I just meant have applications in the pipeline.
Yeah, so let's set a goal of like, we want to get, I don't know, 30 applications, and by the end of August, have 10 people in the pool. Does that seem reasonable? Does other people have different numbers that they think? Do we want to have numbers? I personally think a number goal would be helpful, but I'm open to other thoughts.
Yeah, it's in the bylaws that we will have 9 alternates. That was something PCEP accepted right off the bat. I think when we have more time, it'd be good to have that conversation because, like Lakiana said, when alternates aren't engaged, it's a problem. Our last pool of alternates, like only 2 people ended up being willing to serve after they came to some meetings. I would so what I would suggest is, or what I wanted to say is, if you have people you think might be good and they are interested and they would like more of a connection, I am happy to have phone conversations with folks. I think that really helps. And so please connect them to me for that. And if, yeah, and I mean, Lakian, I think it's great to have a goal. We'll take as many as we can get. I think particularly given now what's going on with policing and the shifts in the community, I'm hoping that we can really get some folks who want to, sit down and do the hard work of being at the table right now. So we will keep going. And thank you all so much for your support. And just let me know if there's anything you need from me or Claudia.
Okay, so let's set a goal of getting 9 applicants by the end of August and 27 applications. So a 1 in 3 rate from there. And I'm gonna give that to the staff. And then if y'all can help say, okay, what part do we think we can do? And then this is a lift that we feel like the PCEP committee can do as well. It sounds like we already are, but we're definitely willing to help. But I think if we do a joint effort, a 9 and 27 plan sounds right. Does that jive with everybody else? Yes, ma'am, Claudia.
I was going to also say that I'm planning to send the application out. I just wanted to obviously have this discussion first, but to the PCEP email list. And on that email list, we have 365 subscribers. So I can always put a note in there that, if other, just network and let folks know in their networks as well. So that could hopefully help right now too, to reach greater audience than just, social media postings and whatnot.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
I'm sorry.
I like that idea.
I was going to say, I saw your response when we sent out the revised application to everybody about it being shorter, too many questions. I agree. I was the one who redrafted it, and I had the same question about, do we need those 4 separate questions, or can we get a good sense of people with one of them? So I'm going to go ahead and collapse those into one question, so it is a much easier process for applying. And I'll run it by y'all.
Okay, we're going to keep the meeting moving. The next agenda item is the journalist discussion. I'm not exactly sure who initially asked us to be on the agenda, but it's discussing possible statement on, oh, that was you, Elliot, journalists. I would like to include that and just kind of, as I had sent in an email earlier this week about use of force against protesters, especially in light of the individual that was injured on Saturday night's protest, the insert of federal troops into this process. So just going to open it up to people's thoughts. I can say that I had a discussion, just to kind of clarify my email. I was not suggesting a town hall or a discussion around just like around use of force, but there is some interest within the law enforcement community of trying to create a situation where we could maybe make some kind of stand down with the use of tear gas and other crowd dispersal tools, if you will, and PCEP's role in helping create a commitment from law enforcement not to use those. And so that's what I was discussing, not just a platform of like, hey, here's another recommendation, or here's another discussion on what they say. So that's what I was suggesting. I guess I didn't really make it clear. But then we also have a statement from PCCEP that could go about journalists or any of those things. So I just want to open that up, what y'all think.
I am wondering, how is that different than the recommendation we already put through saying that we don't want to have the tear gas and other things used on the protesters? How would this be different?
Yeah, so what I had some discussions on was an actual commitment from PPB. Not that they said that they would committed to not doing it, but that the idea was that this would include a commitment from PPB not to use tear gas. So rather than us creating a recommendation and saying, hey, we don't think you should use it, it would be more of something like where PPB says we aren't going to use tear gas. Here are the things that we're asking the community to agree to not do, as we don't use these tools. I won't even call them tools. I'll just call them whatever they are, weapons.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Ann.
Oh,
Oops. Let's let Ann finish her thought and then come back to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I just lost my idea. Sorry. Go ahead.
Just the tear gas, getting a commitment from them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the mayor's already said he doesn't want tear gas used unless, and it's been used. So I don't want tear gas used at all. I want to be upfront about that, but I'm just wondering what this would actually do, you know?
Well, the idea, and again, it's just an idea, would be like if PPB just agreed not to use it. It wouldn't be like not to use it unless if, but like if the idea was that if you could get PPB to agree not to use it and then try and get a situation where you could get community feedback on what would the community, what could, we're asking PPB not to use these 4 things. And if you could get PPB to say, yes, we will not use those, and here's what we're asking from the community to do, but regardless of if the community upholds those things, we are not going to use these methods. That's the thought. Like I said, it's not something that was, that PPB's agreed to, but it was just a thought that was thrown out there to me, and it was discussed. So that's why I bring up, like,
yes.
Would we be interested in hosting some kind of discussion like that, where if PPB agreed to do something like that?
So, like Ann said, we have already offered a recommendation, which is pretty clear that we call for the ban on use of tear gas, no exceptions. So I think we've made our position clear. It would be great if the PPB said they'd be willing to do that. We do not and can't enjoin the entire community into an agreement that, like, we don't control, you know, what someone on the street does. And nor are we leading any of these protests. So I don't think we could take a role in saying, you know, like, we'll do this if PPB stops using tear gas. But certainly if we could engage in a conversation with PPB and get them to limit further or not use tear gas, that would be great. And I think that would be a community service. But again, I think at this point, we've made our position clear on the tear gas. Now it's for PPB's turn to, like, say what they're willing to do and respond to that recommendation. The other idea about journalists came from Megan Bradley, a community member who wrote to PCCEP and asked whether we would want to say something or do something about the attack on journalists. And I think that that's something which we didn't address. So although I'm kind of feeling, like many of you probably, that making these recommendations and these statements is of limited impact. So I'm not sure, you know, how many more statements we want to make about things like this when there are already multiple lawsuits and multiple people making statements. I mean, I would be happy to make that statement, but I don't know how much energy we should put into that.
And to backtrack a little bit to what you were saying, Lakayana, I think we should always involve PPB at an earlier level to get a sense of why they're doing what they're doing and when they're doing what they're doing. Because I'm hearing like they're not even using the tear gas. It's like the other entities, the sheriff's office or the federal government that's using the tear gas. It's hard to tell who's doing what and for what reason. I try to read as many stories as I can, and it really is all over the place depending on where you read and who says what and so forth. So in any event, if that's something that you're recommending, which is reaching out to them, see if we can have, an explanation and a buy-in. I think whether we do a recommendation on it or an agreement, the result is the same, but if we can get buy-in from everybody, that seems to be an instant win.
Yeah. So the idea is to figure out like what are the 3 or 4 things that the community is asking for, and get the local law enforcement agencies to agree not to use them, and not that we can get the community. It's not a we do this and y'all do that kind of a thing, but we are not going to do this, and these are the things we are asking from the community not to engage in. But regardless of if they do those or don't do those things, we are not going to use those. And I think that is an opportunity for PCCEP to take a lead on that. And if it's not us, it at least creating a space where the community could give inputs onto that. So that was a suggestion. I think it's a really big opportunity for PCCEP to take a lead on that, especially if something like that could get done. Like if you could get a PPB or the law enforcement agencies doing this to agree not to use tear gas, like out stipulations.
I think it's important.
Yeah, imagine what that would look like if we're brokering an agreement for that to happen rather than, just have a statement that no one responds to.
Right.
That'd be great if that's possible. And I think it'd only be an extra, week or something of efforts versus, pushing something else forward. So I'd be one to try it.
No.
Any other PCCEP comment on that?
I have a comment. I'm just wondering, I like the idea. Of course, I like dialogue, but I'm just wondering how we would capture the attention of everyone involved. It seems very complex, the protesters,
it's incredibly complex.
I'm just wondering. I like the idea.
The only groups that we could really commit to engaging are the law enforcement agencies, and those are the ones that need to be part of it. Like right at the end of the day, it's their choice of what they decide to use. But I think they understand that what's currently happening is not working. And so the idea that I discussed with someone else was to get law enforcement agencies to commit to not using X amount of things, and then make some asks of the community. But that the underlying idea, again, is that regardless of if the community did or did not do those things, that they would not use those tactics. And I think
so. This meeting's with law enforcement only.
It would be, yes. Like,
okay.
The idea is, we wouldn't host something like this unless the law enforcement agencies agreed beforehand that they were not going to. No. So it's not like, hey, let's have this meeting and try and propose that they come and do these things, but that before we even engaged in any kind of brokering of such an idea, that they would have already signed on to do it. So that's just it. But again, it's just an idea. It was floated, but some people within the law enforcement community have talked about it. So that's my hope. I think it would address some of the journalists. It would definitely address the protests. Because that's the only real way I see out of this, is if law enforcement takes the step of what they're not going to do. And as servants of the community, I think it starts with them. I want to open it up to public comment, thoughts on any of this. The discussion was on making either recommendation. Thanks, Elliot, for being here. He already took off. Thoughts on either a recommendation on journalism or on creating some kind of stand down from law enforcement with certain tactics. Barbara, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for all you're doing. I had a thought, if they're not going to do it sincerely, they need to get rid of all their tear gas or whatever else, rubber bullets or whatever else you don't want them to use. Because if there, it seems to me, just, you know, having worked in various places, if something's there, eventually somebody's going to want to use it. And that tear gas should not be given to anybody. It should be somehow neutralized. I don't know what you do to it, but so that it's not given to another police department. I would hope that that would be included, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to use this pen. Well, then get rid of the pen. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my feeling about it. And then the other thing about it is where do they get this tear gas? Is that by any chance, you know, don't they get some like free military surplus and stuff? Is that where that stuff's coming from, some of that?
I heard that they buy it. They don't get a free surplus. They placed some like big order right as all this was happening from what I read. I don't know what sort of, you know, cop Walmart there is out there, but they certainly buy it from somebody. It was a pretty substantial order.
Okay. So
Mary, hang on, can we ask, Mary Claire, I saw you unmuted yourself. Can you speak to that at all, or anything that you can tell us on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, they purchase it from a supplier. It's not from the military or anything like that. We don't get surplus military stuff. So.
Thank you.
So anyway, if they can actually get rid of it, because as long as they're keeping it, I sort of don't believe they're not going to use it. Just my feeling.
Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Other public comment on use of force against journalists or tear gas or PCCEP helping engage a stand on? Yes, Michelle.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I'm very concerned about the idea of having private conversations with the police and trying to convince them to change behavior. There's already been a statement by Daryl Turner, which was basically, I think, this no confidence in everybody. I think it's been clear they've got directives. There are people that have a contract that they're subject to discipline. And I think PCCEP, there's all sorts of groups that are involved in doing the protests from many different perspectives. And if you believe it would be appropriate to have a forum where you get all these people together and you try to have facilitators and try to negotiate something, which I don't think is doable, I think this is a real moment in time for the police to be the ones to step up and say, we hear your voices and we're going to look at changing our behavior. I think for PCCEP to try to, I think it's a, I highly recommend that you not engage in that kind of a discussion, particularly because if there's any concern about transparency, I think it's really important for the community to feel that PCCEP is, I know you're not taking sides, but it's about engaging the community and not, you got to engage the police, but it's about engaging the community. So I would just really be troubled by seeing you do that. I think it's right now going to be dealt with through some different kinds of things that are going to be moving forward. There's, stuff that's happening with the legislation about use of force stuff and about crowd control, because they just had testimony about that last week. And I think that it can really muddy things up. If the police come forward and give a proposal and they want to give it to somebody and they want to lead it all, then people could choose whether or not they want to participate in it. But I don't think PCCEP should be facilitating that.
Really appreciate those comments, Michelle. Thank you. I think that's something
You're
we're really
welcome.
happy to hear. Other public comment? Okay, we are going to move forward. I think I really do appreciate Michelle's comments. I think that's really important for us to consider. So thank you for that. We have to craft the agenda for the July PCCEP meeting.
Can I just break in? I think Barb had her hand up, didn't she? Barb wanted to comment, I believe.
Hello. And she's really feeling that way right now, by the way.
I had my screen off.
I had the chat on here. So what I just simply want to say is know what you're asking for and be careful what you wish for, because Portland PD is saying they were not using tear gas. They're using the explosive part, which is the CS charge. So if you say we don't want tear gas, great, they're not using tear gas. That's all. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, so we are going to move on to the July agenda for PCCEP. We know one of the things is that we're going to have the vote for co-chairs and alternate co-chair.
When do you want to have the ballots ready?
And well, that's one really good question is what are the ballots going to be? I think we need to maybe do I would suggest a couple Google Forms, or unless y'all have like a more secure system. Claudia or Judith?
Yeah, hi. I think that using Zoom, we could just have the members send their votes to either me or Claudia or Theo through the chat feature directly to us, to one of us.
Pick the one of you. Don't have it be all three of you.
No, it wouldn't be all three of us. We would definitely pick one, but I think that might be the easiest. Thank you, Barb.
An unintended comment. Okay, that makes sense. Do we have any recommendations that are upcoming?
The settlement. Oh, who was that? The settlement agreement and policy, or the settlement agreement policy committee will be discussing a recommendation on that we received comments in the past about police volunteering and that being helpful as a community policing tool where they're going to places instead of in uniform with guns to actually recommend that they volunteer in the community that they police. So that's one of the topics to be discussed, and I'm hoping that'll be a recommendation once we have our meeting.
Okay, awesome. And other subcommittees that have recommendations or things coming forward. The race
will we be talking about codifying PCCEP too?
Yes.
I know there's a meeting about that tomorrow.
Is there?
Yeah, we're going to discuss that in the settlement agreement and policy committee. Next step forwards with respect to that. So I don't know if you want to have that general discussion here and then go forward from there, but I know you wanted to kind of get ahead of the city and codifying that, and we're kind of a little bit short on lawyers at this point in time, but you know, we can start doing that unless you've heard something else from the city, and then, you know.
So the mayor mentioned it in his press conference on K2 News, maybe a day ago, 2 days ago, his reiteration of that. And I think it's just, we have to seize on that and push what we want to get done. And I think we should vote on our recommendations for what we would like to see on that based off of the 9 recommendations that I had given to Nicole, and really, you know, vote on it and then, you know, use that to make a plan with the mayor to get it done. It's not even something that he's like, oh, I think we should do it. It's like he wants to get it done. So let's take him up on his word and make that happen. So I think we could spend some time, like a good 45 minutes to an hour, going through our ideas and hearing public feedback and then passing that.
Okay. So we'll be discussing that in the next full meeting as well.
Yeah, so I think it's good. I think I would keep it in yours. And I think we can maybe even use tomorrow's meeting to just, you know, bat around some ideas and, you know, maybe help kind of craft what will be discussed at the full body meeting. Like y'all can come up with like, what do you think the discussion should be about, and then we'll have that hour in there, and then we'll just take it from there.
Sounds good.
And do we have the information that you got from the mayor's office, Lakiana?
I gave 9 recommendations. We're going to be meeting with the mayor the next week as part of with TAC, the Training Advisory Committee, and the Citizen Review Committee. So, and I also asked for a separate meeting for the PCCEP Steering Committee. So in between now and the end of the month, we will have those discussions kind of figured out as far as what the mayor has said, what his thoughts are on a plan, and make sure that that's ready to go in alignment with us passing our recommendation. I also want to put on there is, so we have a 2.5 hour meeting, so we'll have codifying will be the first hour or second hour. The recommendation from the on police volunteering, and then also the Race Equity Subcommittee has had a recommendation on the advisory committees, and that's come back up. The Latinx Advisory Committee, that's not their name, it's the Latino, it's something like that, Latinx Advisory Committee for the city, and the Slavic Advisory Committee both put out a joint statement on violence against in the city that was destroying downtown. I was personally not pleased with that statement because all it talked about was people who were destroying the city, but it made no mention of Black and brown people being destroyed in the city or being neglected. And I just felt that there was such an opportunity, especially, from a Latinx subcommittee, which was just recreated, to talk about the Latinx community, talk about the law enforcement agencies that are engaged in deportations, and to make a statement that there is a narrative out there that this entire thing is just about protesters destroying property in the city. And that is a product of a system that supports Black violence. And so that's, if you don't mention that in there, that to me is dismissive. And so there's a recommendation to review the current committees and just get more dialogue. I don't necessarily have a huge problem with it, but it's just more clarity around like what was the intent of that statement, and just those subcommittees in general. They're trying to restart the African American one. Chief Lavelle was on the call with that, led a call that I was on that talked about it. So long story short, we're going to put that up as a recommendation as well. I think it's kind of like Vinny, what you were saying there. We've discussed it, but it's still got to be finalized at our next meeting. So just to be clear, we're going to have vote of co-chairs, updates. I would love to have PPB give an update on things that they're doing. I'd love to have the mayor give an update on what they're doing. I'm even going to invite the police union president. We talked with him, Daryl Turner, about being more present in PCCEP meetings. I think it's important, regardless of how you feel on his politics or his situation, that they are involved in these conversations and giving updates to the community. So hard for them. Right. So we'll do that in that first half hour, and we'll have an hour on the recommendations, and then codifying PCCEP. There's just a comment on Elliot's ballot initiative. We haven't seen that yet. So if he wants to put that up, he can put that up there. But I think that fills out the full meeting.
I'm a little cautious about this ballot initiative, to be honest with you. We're getting into like pretty thick politics at this point.
I am too. I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree, but so I think maybe we can connect with Elliot offline about that.
Okay. I'm in agreement on that too. I'm wondering about that.
Yeah.
Lakiana, we have to do the COCO report.
Is that due?
Yeah, we just got it. It's like 68 pages.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I did speak with Amy from COCO, and she requested that if we can put COCO on the agenda, and she said either they can do 45 minutes to an hour, so they don't take up too much time as well.
That's half our meeting.
Those happen quarterly, so we should be anticipating them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again?
They happen quarterly, every 3 months. So we should be able to anticipate that that will be on the agenda every 3 months.
Where was that sent to? I mean, I know that
He
Amy,
said distribution
Yeah.
last week.
okay. So our meetings are what, 2.5 hours long? So it's going from, yeah.
And I believe, Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's part of the required piece of PCCEP's work.
The settlement agreement says that you guys can do co-host their town halls. Given that it's a quarterly report and it's, I think it's up to you guys what you want to do. I don't think it's mandatory, but I think it's appropriate. I think it's up to you guys though.
So what we have on the agenda is, updates, from the 3 law enforcement heads, our regular updates from the subcommittees, and the voting of co-chairs. That will take up at least a half hour. Then we had on there space for our recommendations, and then space to codify PCCEP. The codifying piece is very important, but then so is recommendations. I'm curious to know where y'all see this fitting in here. If we want to extend our meeting, if we want to consider hosting a separate town hall as we've done before to talk about this. What are y'all's thoughts?
If we're required to do it quarterly, we could do a summary, but everybody would have to read the report. Because there's no point in discussing something that people haven't read, and it's huge. So maybe we ought to recommend that we could save another meeting that would give people time to review the materials. I don't know. What does everybody think?
They can do their own.
Because we have to, we can make recommendations on what's in it, and there's a time limit on that. So are we denying the public an opportunity to weigh in on some of the information to make recommendations? That would be my question. What's the time limit?
If I can chime in real quick. So on the COCO report, it's asking for folks to comment by 7th, and they were open to like doing a joint town hall with one of the subcommittee meetings, but just looking at the August calendar and when their time or deadline for public comment is on the 7th, Tuesday the 4th would be like kind of like the earliest that they can chime in on one of, like as a joint town hall, because technically the first subcommittee meeting wouldn't even be till that second week of August, which would be like August 11th.
What about the behavioral health subcommittee? We could launch his report as our speaker, and then that would give folks a chance to think about it, ask questions. And the other half is Casey's going to do more education on the next the BHU chapter. So 2 events in our group works really well, and I'd be happy to host that time slot the first Tuesday in August.
Okay. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide if you guys want to do that, or
That would be like the 4th, you're saying, Amy?
Yeah, the first Tuesday in August, we could have half the meeting. The second half would be COCO, and the first half would be Casey around the BHU training, information, education piece.
I would suggest we do it there. That way we don't overload our monthly July meeting. So I appreciate that.
Tatiana, if I could just mention, the only thing I would ask you to consider is you certainly don't get the same attendance at the Behavioral Health Subcommittee that you do at the monthly general meeting. And the COCO's reports are pretty important, to the, to this whole process. I don't know that they need a whole hour, but because I think the last quarterly report, they only asked for a half an hour, wasn't it, Claudia? It depends upon how many public questions you get, I guess, but I think they could be quick, but relegating it to, the subcommittee, you just won't have the same public, I think, exposure nor, feedback.
Yeah, but is that report right now publicly available? Because
Yes.
you're
Yes,
talking.
yes, it's been public, it's been given to all the PCEP members. It's posted on the COCO's website. It's, it's up on, so yes, and it's all been provided to PCEP members.
But we have to be prepared to answer questions.
Not answer questions, you can ask questions.
Yeah, I would suggest we maybe do some special advertising for it. I just feel like with so many things that are stacked into this meeting, I think it'll be really hard to, put something in that we want to be able to spend the time on it. And if we try and stick it in the slot and say we want to, get it in, hear from it, and then get it out, I think is the other end of that. And I think if we add it onto a subcommittee where there's the actual time to discuss it without getting it lost, I think would be the best way to do it. And I would be happy to help advertise it. And I know I will definitely be in attendance.
As an alternative, I would be willing to postpone the recommendation from the settlement policy agreement until a later time if we run out of time. It could be on the last part of the agenda.
Right, but what we don't want to get into is a situation where compliance of something prevents our subcommittee, our committee from actually doing the work. And I think if they want to be of most help, I think it would be helpful to allow the meeting to get in with a lot of stuff that's on the block right now and leave that to a separate time where we can actually focus on it.
Well, Lakiana, then I would suggest that we just let COCO know that you don't have time on that agenda, and it will be up to them whether they want to set a separate town hall or be part of a subcommittee one, rather than binding them right now without involving them. I think we should probably ask them, how they want to proceed.
Okay, I will do the reach out for that.
Actually, Lakiana, I think it makes sense for Claudia to respond to Amy. And
Sure.
that way, so less of something for your plate.
Yeah, no problem. I can get back to Amy. I let her know already that I was gonna have an update for her by tomorrow morning. So I'll let her know. And yeah, the email with the report did get sent out to the PCEP distribution list and to the PCEP email list last week, sorry. And it is featured on the homepage of the website. And I can extend that because I think I did 14 days, but I can extend it for another 14 days after today. So I'll get back to her and let her know the options that you guys want to choose from.
Okay, yeah, you feel free to include me on that, but I do not mind anything at this point coming off my plate. So what we got for the July meeting is the big pieces are voting for co-chair, an hour block for recommendations, an hour block for codifying PCEP, and then updates from PPB, PPA, and the mayor's office with about a 5-minute slot each. We don't need to turn it into a whole big thing, but we just want to get into a more of a system where they are presenting and updating the community on things that they're working on. Let's open this up to public comment. Going once, going twice. Okay. We're done a little early. Is there anything else people want to discuss? Otherwise, I'd be happy to let us, take these extra 12 minutes and roll on out into our evenings. But does anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Okay, just to recap, we got a plan in place today from the open seat to vote in sequential order. Those ballots are, those people who are running are due by Tuesday, the 21st at 5 p.m. Email to Claudia. Recruitment, we are going to try and recruit. We aren't going to try. We are going to recruit 9 applicants by the end of August and receive 27 applications. Judith already has trimmed down our application. So we're going to be doing some outreach, including the Racial Equity Subcommittee, working with Dr. Joyce Harris to recruit Black women. I'm going to tap Amy to help connect with the rest of the steering committee and others to help craft a plan to get out to other groups. And we're asking that the staff help lead that charge, and that PCCEP will help in that process as well. We discussed journalism, use of force against journalists, and ends of ceasefire, and agree that, well, at least I've heard from the community that that should come from PPB, which we definitely agree on. And then we crafted a plan for the July meeting. So appreciate y'all. Anne's got one comment to close us all down.
Comment. Is Claudia going to send out the application to the mailing list? Did we formalize that? Yeah, so the 300 people on that. That sounds good.
I just sent it to all of you again with a few more modifications that we discussed. So please look at it, review it, and get your feedback back to Claudia by Thursday, and then we'll be sending it out. Thank you so much.
Got it. All right, y'all. 10 minutes early.
10 minutes, woohoo. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Take care.